John, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. As John said, I will deliver some brief remarks, as will our interim athletics director, Ms. Tyra, and then we'll be sure to provide time to answer some of your questions following this. Today, the NCAA Infractions Appeals Committee announced that it had upheld earlier imposed penalties on the University of Louisville, inclusive of financial penalties and the vacation of victories between 2011 and 2015, the 2013 National Championship, and the 2012 Final Four appearance. I cannot say this strongly enough. We believe the NCAA is simply wrong to have made this decision. Like many of you, I believe that it was important for the university to have appealed portions of the original decision, and to do so, we prepared thoroughly. We engaged an attorney with expertise in the appellate process, a man who is a professor at Georgetown Law School and who has since been named the Litigator of the Year by the American Lawyer. We felt that the young men who achieved these victories and the thousands of fans who supported them deserved our best effort. The university appeal, however, was challenging from the beginning. The facts of this case are simply terrible, causing many to find the detail of the appeal not compelling. It is also important to note that precedent for such a case does not exist, and that the NCAA Infractions Committee has wide discretion as it determines penalties. The pain this decision has created for our fans and our players who were not involved in the events in question is perhaps the most regretful result of this determination. The university, under prior leadership, never made excuses for what took place. There was an immediate recognition of the facts, the issuance of an apology, serious self-imposed penalties, extraordinary cooperation with the investigation that followed, and the strengthening of and creation of policies and procedures to make sure that this never happened again. Under the NCAA's own rules, such cooperation should have been a factor in determining the severity of the punishment. Instead, it was ignored. It is my belief, however, that we did the right thing because it was the right thing, not that we expected to receive something in return. A dark cloud has hung over our heads for more than 2 years. The events that took place in the past have painted an unfair portrait of the University of Louisville. We are a community of educators, scholars, clinicians, researchers, community servants, and athletes, and these events simply do not define us. What does define us is our commitment to our missions and our resilience. We are ready to move ahead and display an even stronger commitment to excellence both on and off the court. The NCAA's ruling cannot change the accomplishments of or the excitement generated by our men's basketball team. It cannot change the love we have for this great university. I hope you will join me in remembering those players and their accomplishments. It is also my hope that you will join me as the university looks ahead to brighter days in athletics and as an academic institution. Again, my thanks for joining us today, and at this point I will call upon Vince Tyra for additional comments.
Thank you, Dr. Postel. I'm just going to make a few follow-up comments to what was just mentioned. I think that during this whole process, your emotions, my emotions, go from mad to sad. It's a variety of things, including disappointment that you go through based upon the way the process went, and certainly the outcome. The process itself was unusual to me from a business standpoint. That typically what you see if you're dealing with an organization like an OSHA or somewhere where there's healthcare guidelines, it's more black and white. And with the NCAA, there are bylaws which seem to be guidelines, and then there's great discretion on the guidelines. And it's very difficult to follow and set precedent and follow that, from today or any day going forward. And that was certainly an unusual experience for me, and hope to not have to be a part of anything like it again. I think the one thing is we bring closure to some of these situations. it's not going to bring closure to the memories and the success that our teams had. We're talking about a span of a period. We did have great success, 2012, 2013, and this is where your emotions move to the sad. And I'm sad for our players. I'm certainly sad for our staff and those that helped create the success, and our fans in particular, who have been passionate about this team, these teams I should say, but also, since then, and this has been challenged, the fans have certainly made their voice well heard throughout, and I know they're going to be highly disappointed with what we're talking about today. It's awful to have to go through. So with that, I think as it gets to the players themselves, I was fortunate that I grew up with a father who played here and accomplished a great deal individually, and the teams accomplished a great deal. And unfortunately, the players who did play during this time aren't going to have the same ability with their kids that my father had in going through and looking at the records and understanding what they did individually and what their teams accomplished. So I feel for them. I wish there was something we could do in that regards, and we'll certainly think about it. But I attended those Final Fours in New Orleans and Atlanta, and have great memories. And as we won in Atlanta, my mother came home wearing her celebratory hat on the plane, and that's a memory that I won't forget, and why it was created. Having pictures with Bill Walton and all those things that she got to do was great. But as it relates to the players and so forth, the excitement they had and what we got to celebrate as a city, those memories won't be forgotten. So from here, we'll certainly remove the formal recognition of our accomplishments from our facilities, but they won't remove them from our hearts and our minds. Our men's basketball program and our athletics program in total will continue to push forward with the support of our fans and replace the 2012 and 2013 banners with banners to come across many sports. What's happened here today and what's occurred will not hold us back. I think the transactions of a few in the NCAA certainly won't hold us back. So with that, I'll open it up to question and answers.
Dr. Postel, does the university plan to challenge this decision in court?
The NCAA process is clear in that there is no further appeal within the NCAA system once the appellate body has weighed in as they did today. So within the NCAA, there is no further opportunity for appeal.
How about the legal system, the actual judicial system? You could sue the NCAA.
Theoretically, that's a possibility. There's been no formal conversation at the university around that possibility.
Dr. Postel, what does this do for you guys financially? What is the hit that you take? Do you have any exact numbers? Do you have the money, frankly, to pay it back?
Yes, certainly. The penalty is somewhere in the vicinity of $600,000. I know that much larger numbers have been quoted. That's simply not true. It's well under $1 million. To me, of course, I'm watching the university's finances, so I don't like to write checks. Make sure that's a quote. That being said, that's not the real loss here today. I mean, our loss is for our fans, for the players who are suffering as a result of the vacation of titles. We'll find the money, and money's replaceable. The other things aren't. And as Vince nicely pointed out, the memories are there, but some of the formal recognition will not be.
How does this affect litigation with Tom Jurich or Rick Pitino?
I don't see that it does in any way. This is a separate matter relating to a previous investigation and the appeal of a previously determined penalty.
How does this affect you in terms of the brand? What's your message either to students or parents writing checks here, or for that matter, kids who might want to in the future? Well, my message about our brand is that U of L has an outstanding brand. One person doesn't define our brand. And we have thousands of wonderful students, faculty, and staff doing great things every day. They're going to do wonderful things in the future. We're going to move past this. We've done absolutely everything humanly possible to defend portions of the penalties that were levied. And now it's time for us to look ahead, and that's what will determine our brand in days to come.
What's next, Dr. Postel? Vince talked about the formal banner. So what is next for you in terms of like removing that?
Well, there are some technical aspects to the actual removal of formal recognition that has the NCAA name associated with it and trophies and those sorts of things. And at this point, to be honest with you, we're compiling a list so we make sure that we understand what those issues are so that we are in compliance with the NCAA, and that will become apparent in the next few days.
Do they give you a deadline of when you must, as an example, put on the map?
I think as soon as feasible, but Vince, do you know different? I don't think there's a date certain. No.
When and how were you informed? They tell you yesterday that it was going to happen today?
Yes, the typical NCAA process is that the day before the public announcement, they provide an announcement to our attorneys and institutional officials so that we have an opportunity to prepare and make sure we understand the ruling so that we can have an event such as this.
What does this say to future schools that are in your shoes? There are some who say that you did all the right things and this happened anyway, and that future schools shouldn't do this.
Well, I suppose that argument could be made, but as I said in my remarks, I like to think we do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So I personally cannot imagine not being cooperative in an investigation, not saying I'm sorry when something awful happened, not taking responsibility for it, not trying to put in place stronger mechanisms to prevent recurrence. So regardless of whether at the end of the day those things give you a credit, they're simply the right thing to do. And I think there's a different problem associated with making a decision to not do those sorts of things.
The dollar calculated for the fine, does that include any future tournament earnings from those particular runs in the tournament that haven't been dispersed yet?
It does not, but those are trailing amounts. So it's our belief that this number is a pretty good estimate and captures by far the bulk of what we would owe in return.
Are there concerns about the rest of the season, how this won't reverse the men's basketball season, and also sales for future seasons?
Well, I'll answer, and I'd like to hear Vince's response as well. I mean, what I'd like to say is that we are fortunate to have a wonderful interim men's basketball coach. David is doing a terrific job under very difficult circumstances this year. I don't see, quite honestly, how this could add to the difficulties he has already had to encounter. And despite that, he's done a fantastic job. He's kept the team together and he's coached them to victories. So I don't see how this changes the season going forward.
Dr. Postel, two other individuals have appealed the decision. Do you know if their appeals were addressed in this ruling or are they separate cases on it?
I want to make sure I understand. Are you
Rick Pitino and Brandon Williams appealed the original ruling. Do you know if that appeal has, if those appeals have been
Well, Coach Pitino did not continue with his appeal. So that it was announced some time ago that he had personally decided to withdraw that. So that stood as is. I do not know about the status of Brandon Williams' appeal.
Dr. Postel, not to be glib, but given what happened at North Carolina, is doing the right thing to do?
You know, Tim, it's so hard to compare situations like that. This is one of the difficulties in the NCAA. If you look at legal cases that take place in civil court, which we have so much more experience with, there's a large body of evidence to show what happens in specific circumstances. It's like Vince's analogy with OSHA. With the NCAA, the cases are so different from one another, and so the circumstances are so unique that it's really difficult to draw comparisons. The things that happen there, as we understand them, of course that's only from a distance. You know, we don't work at North Carolina, but the facts that we understand are completely different from the facts in this case. So I'm not sure that drawing a comparison amounts to much.
Dr. Postel, Athletics Association Director Bill Stone said that the moral authority of the NCAA is at an all-time low. Would you agree with that statement?
You know, I would not use that terminology. I think that we have to understand that we are part of the NCAA. We have to follow its rules, like them or not, and we've done that. And we will continue to play in NCAA competition going forward, not just in men's basketball, but in so many sports. So I don't think at this point it's helpful to characterize things in that way. We're sad, like Vince said, we're mad about the actions of people who went before us, but we have to move on.
Do damages suffered by the university monetarily and also from a brand standpoint, does that play in any open lawsuit/mitigation, mediation that could be taking place right now?
You know, we can't really comment on pending litigation, but these matters, according to the NCAA, are considered in isolation from one another. So our understanding is that they looked at the facts involving this case and adjudicated on those. I don't think there's the bleed over from other matters. We've been led to believe that there should not be.
This is for Vince. In terms of getting traction, since you've taken this job now, this is the bottom. And is there some silver lining that at least you can gain more positive traction with that financially on the court and all that?
Well, I think, you know, we had an idea where the financial piece was going to come, so I had some, you know, obviously had thoughts around that. I think from the, in terms of just bringing closure to it, I think for the fan base, it's just good to bring closure to it. I'm sure there'll be some open issues, as the question was about, you know, should we go further with any other action? But I think in terms of, if you asked our 600 plus student athletes, they're ready to move on.
This might seem like a technicality, but when you do take down the banner, where will it go?
We haven't decided where it's going to go yet.
Would you like to see a court case to go to federal court?
You know, honestly, I think it'd be a difficult case, and as Dr. Postel mentioned, we haven't formally discussed that. I would personally probably not be in favor at this point. I think the value of trying to beat the NCAA on guidelines is difficult, and I think there's not a lot of precedent for that happening, so I think emotions need to be filtered a bit and be a little more objective about what precedent there may be. In this case, you know, certainly this is new precedent that we're seeing here, but I think it'd be difficult for me to think about dipping into the piggy bank to try to continue this on while we have other issues to deal with here.
I know it's very early stages, but I know this has been brought up a number of times with the fans that if the official NCAA banner is supposed to come down, as you said, in another capacity, can you put a banner up as in you defeated Michigan in 2013, letting everybody remember that particular game that happened instead of putting NCAA championship?
Yeah, I would like to believe we weren't thinking about that, and frankly, and had a hope that we're going to be at this point. But I think we have, you know, in your own mind, you do think about different things. I just, you know, we don't want to put salt in the wound. We're trying to think about what's appropriate on how you can recognize those players and those wins, or what you can or can't do. We'll certainly recognize the losses, unfortunately, and not the wins. But you know, we'll be thoughtful about what we can do and keep within the perspective of the NCAA.
Vince, have you talked to the current guys, or what do you want David's message to be to them? They're the brand now, although they weren't affected, you know, they weren't part of this, they are the brand now, are going to get questions.
Yeah, I think that, you know, have I talked to them? No, I mean, you guys are finding out first and foremost, so it's a little bit awkward in just the way the process works out that you can't go talk to them. So I will do that today. I'll be over with the team after practice today and sit with them. But to be honest, Joni, we've had that conversation leading into the season and addressed it up front, that knowing that this could go one way or another. There certainly may be some blip of, like, you know, the bummer of it and be disappointed, but these kids really think about what's in front of them. They've been pretty focused on this year's season, as has the staff. So look, they're going to be disappointed. They have to answer more questions to it, but you know, I'm not sure that it changes how hard they're going to play tomorrow night.
Have you guys talked to or heard from anybody from the 2013 team? I'm sure they're obviously all devastated.
Yeah, not at this time. You can imagine their emotions, though, and I can sense what their reaction is today, and I think it's in line with my own, if not higher.
Were you guys optimistic at all? I mean, we thought it was going to happen a couple of weeks ago, that there would be an announcement, and people who are fans and live here kind of publicly thought it wasn't going to come down. Were you guys at all optimistic, or were you trying not to even go there?
No, I think we were optimistic. I think we felt like we had a terrific litigator in Neil, and our case was pretty matter of fact. I felt like we got in there and fought back that this was, you know, there isn't precedent for this. The guidelines were there. We were not properly informed in our mind of what the actions versus the penalties were. It was gray area. It wasn't black and white. We felt like we spelled that out for them using precedent, which you would do in an appeal case, and felt good about our case in terms of what we presented and how we believe things would have played out had we known.
Dr. Postel, I wonder if in your gut you feel as if the optics of this case made it that much more difficult to get around because it was strippers and prostitutes in a dorm.
I think the answer to that is yes, Tim. I mean, this is a sensational case. People don't send their children to a university to encounter these kinds of things. So when you hear a story like this, it's appalling. It's especially appalling to those of us who work here and spend our whole lives trying to elevate the image of the institution. I mean, we're focusing here appropriately a lot today on the negative impact this has on the players, and that can't be overestimated. But this is an impact to the entire university. This is our home. This is the place we work. Some of us have been here more than 20 years. We care about this place. And this is not the kind of activity that we wish to be associated with. And so I think that answers your question.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently in this?
There really isn't. We hired one of the finest attorneys in the United States, by all accounts. We researched the matter thoroughly. We found everything we could in the NCAA in terms of matters similar to this. As I said before, there's no exact precedent. No one has had a case like this, but there are cases that have similar components. And so we drew upon those to look at how the NCAA arrived at penalties, and we found significant inconsistencies in the way this case was adjudicated. And so, as Vince pointed out, we had an opportunity to lay that out very thoroughly and thoughtfully for the NCAA Appeals Committee back in December of this year, and quite honestly, we felt good about it. I do not know what else we could have done. The person we hired was a litigator, so questions have been asked previously, is this the kind of thing, that you might consider taking to the next step? You would hire the same kind of guy. I mean, if you were going to do this, you would hire a top national litigator, in this case from a very respected Washington, D.C. law firm, to come in and present the case in the most favorable light possible. We did that. And at the end of the day, the discretionary ability of the NCAA was broad enough so as to allow them to uphold their judgment. And I think, in all honesty, that's what makes it so difficult to think through the possibility of a further appeal, because we would be once again going up against that same set of arguments.
Do you feel like the NCAA made an example out of the university with this ruling?
Well, I don't think they made an example of us specifically. I think they're setting out to make an example of any kind of wrong behavior in their judgment. So we've seen other examples very recently where the NCAA has ruled in an unfavorable way against schools for various types of behavior, and I think the message is loud and clear to anyone who has not heard it. I mean, you have to run a clean program. And if you do, then you won't be spending your time giving these kinds of press conferences. If there's a problem, you're going to be called into question.
Do you feel the NCAA more ruled on the sensational details as opposed to what you guys consider the facts of the case and what was the argument you presented?
Yes, I do. Similar to Tim's question, I think the overriding nature of this matter is so appalling to most people that they don't listen beyond that. They've heard all they need to hear, the details.